Welcome, everybody. We're so grateful to be back with you on episode 2. I'm Anita Grantham, and I'm passionate about creating great places to work because I feel like life is too short to not work in places that are great. And we as HR leaders have the opportunity to be a part of that creation. And I'm excited to put all my energy into doing that with each of you on these sessions. And with that, let's talk about what we're doing today. So thank you for your registration. In your registration, you kind of gave us a lot about this topic. You shared that you're struggling as HR professionals. In fact, in some of the research we've seen, it looks like 87% of HR professionals say they're facing personal challenges. And we definitely got that sentiment from each of you in your registration as we were building this episode. So we feel like we're taking care of everybody else. We're wondering if there's anyone that's out there that will take care of us. So know that we're here on these different webinars to take care of each other, and we'll talk about that. There's a lot of pressure to make decisions. We are talking about in our prep call, the pendulum swing from we're seeing hire to pause hiring to layoffs. And we're seeing that all through our LinkedIn feeds, seeing lots of nods on that. And so what we want you to take away from our time together is building a community where people will take care of each other, building a safe place where you can ask all the hard questions that you may feel you cannot ask anywhere else. We want you to build relationships together so that you can expand your own network and be able to have other people there for you that you can go ask questions of. And with that, we'll get started kind of with our own questions. So feel free to put your answers into the chat. And we're curious if you're one of that 87% that's facing challenges right now, what is your biggest challenge, personal or professional, that's kind of put you into a state of neutral? Right? Where you don't feel like you're going forward, maybe you feel like you're moving in molasses, but what are those things that are causing you to feel constrained?
Don't everyone spill your heart to us at once, but I can say, I moved recently. I've had some family changes, and man, does that show up in my work life too. And so I'm lucky that where I work, I have such great support and great leaders that I feel able to be transparent and vulnerable with, but it still shows up in my ability to really, engage in the way that I want to on a daily basis and meet my personal goals at work. So I know it can be personal, it can be in the office, but yeah, what's causing your burnout?
I'm curious, Cara, maybe people on the call feel that it's an inaccurate representation. Do you believe that the 87% is real?
Yeah, are you not burned out? If you're not burned out, tell us how.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, please share. I'm sure somebody needs to know.
Yeah, challenge the data for sure.
Okay, will someone just put something in the chat so I know it's working then? Okay, there we go. There's the flood. Okay, I was like, how can y'all not have anything to share? Okay, so yeah, Stacy wants your team wants answers about how hiring is going to trend out. Yeah, and you don't have answers. Yeah, just your gut. Oh yeah, the anxiety and taking that on. And if you're in HR, you're probably empathetic, so you might be taking on some of that anxiety constantly. Yeah. Becca, you're feeling better. You're not as burned out since you switched jobs. So yeah, change is as good as a rest sometimes. So good for you. I'm glad you're feeling better. But unfortunately for your organization, they must have lost somebody really valuable because you weren't able to feel resilient in where you were. Evan, not having enough resources on my team, running lean as a company is tough. Juggling having 2 kids at home. Yeah. And sicknesses that never seem to end. We all just keep getting new germs, right? New versions of that. So yeah. And another one to running lean. So some of your organizations are asking you to be really tighten your belts, be really careful about hiring, it sounds like, which is maybe a little different than what we've heard recently. Well, I guess most recently we've been hearing that pendulum swing again. Mimi, you're stressed out, just started getting a new job and about to get divorced. I feel you, Mimi. I'm in that too. Separations are hard. I send you all the support and care. I'm glad you're here with us. Anita, do you want to talk to any of these things that we're getting? Isabel and Patty have some additional, just like not wanting to return to the office, having to. I'm sure your teams too, if you're somewhere that they're asking for everyone to come into the office, you're dealing with some employees who probably are having a hard time with that, or even having a hard time being remote, if that's what you're sticking with.
Yeah, I'm looking for some themes here. Thanks for everybody to jump in. So it looks like we can talk about hiring a little bit. We can talk about, I'm curious, Becca, you say that you're not as burned out as you were before. What are you doing to ensure that you don't get burned out in this next job? And the lean piece is always critical. So let's start with the lean, because we always have more demand than we seem to have supply. I know even in times of big budgets, it seems like the HR budget still runs lean. And I don't know about all of you, but I feel like the expectation is a lot greater these days, yet the budgets have stayed really intact. I've talked with people, big businesses and small business, and that seems to be really, really consistent. And so one of the tricks that I think you could employ right away that I'm working on with our team here, I'm calling it rigorous, relentless prioritization. And it's actually a competency that I really want all of us to practice. We as people leaders, especially in HR, have a tendency, we want to say yes to everything and we want to be people pleasers. And I really want you to challenge yourself to not be people pleasers and to focus on the things that matter most to making the business successful. Because the reason why, we're kind of curious too about this hiring piece is that teams that are hiring are usually happier. Right? The business is going well, you're bringing people into the business. And now with this new potential slowdown, or even companies getting ready to do layoffs, it changes the energy around the work that we do a lot. And so relentless prioritization is critical. And then also, how do you make sure you keep your energy high and positive? Happy HR teams are happy companies. We talked about this a little bit last time. And so that's why we wanted to bring up this topic, is for how are you doing and how are you keeping yourself whole and happy to feed the energy of the never-ending demands. I always share with my team, I've said, don't worry about it. You can do it. It'll be there tomorrow for you. It's not going away. The challenges and the demands will always be there tomorrow. So do the best you can. And that's why prioritization is key. And we can go in and make the biggest impact on the things that we know matter most. Oftentimes we're just in that flywheel of working hard and not really working smart. Cara, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's we've got a great response from Becca too about how she's managing her new position and just how it's different in general. She's had 18 spots at one time, the previous place that was hiring in a pretty rapid way, it looks like, and then to trying to fill 3 to 4 spots at a time. So and reduced hours and that kind of thing. So that's great. Thanks. And I think that you're right on about ruthless prioritization. It's so hard, and the people pleasing, and we have to be clear about what our intentions are and the goals are, so that we can show up and communicate, I think, thoughtfully and compassionately when we can't be people pleasing. So that's a strong competency to build that I personally know is somewhere I will continue to grow forever. And I do want to ask you what you think the current state of HR professionals is with, like, what are the top concerns that we are seeing with you leading this HR community? What is it that you're anticipating?
I think a lot of it is captured here, Cara. Like, we're seeing struggling personas within our employee base that are struggling with anxiety and depression, as Isabel highlights here. We're seeing I don't believe in balance. We can talk about that. No work-life balance, especially with this remote work continuing to go on now that, COVID is kind of put into the background. Gas prices are into the forefront. So we still have people wanting to stay at home or not being able to nail this hybrid remote culture. And then the other piece, I think, too, is just this back and forth of we're hiring, we're not hiring, we're pausing, we're growing. And I love this, Patty puts here, a work-life blur. And then it all ties up into this prioritization point of if we're not super clear on what we're delivering and all of these things keep coming in, I love voicing, hey, this is what I'm focused on. If you'd like me to focus on something else, I will. And this is the thing that moves to the back burner. Do we all agree that that's how we want it to go? So the action out of prioritization is to call your top 3 and feel free to say, this is what I'm not going to do. And it really pushes the conversation forward in a way that you can make a meaningful difference if you and the teams feel you need to push something else to the top of it. And a lot of you have started new jobs, and I know that's stressful too. You're meeting new people. It's hard to start a new job remote. That is stress in itself. And I don't think as an organization, as an HR organization, we've really adapted onboarding in a way that is engaging and connected to remote new team members. There's an art to that I'm still curious about figuring out. So those are the things I see that people are really struggling. 40% of HR professionals say that they've thought about leaving their current role because of burnout. And that's another big reason why I wanted to have this topic, because what are you running from and what are you running to? And if you haven't identified what's causing that burnout, my guess is you're going to recreate it in the next job. And I'm seeing this is like my number one question I'm asking candidates right now is, why do you want to come to Bamboo? Why do you want to leave where you are? Because I can't tell you that the problems are going to be necessarily different. So I think if we can maybe focus on that would be useful. And in our own selves, where are we struggling with that as HR professionals when we take that recruiting call?
Yeah, I think that's also important to remember about your relationships at home too, right? And the outside of the work and your work-life blur. What are you running from? What are you running to? Or are you just, going into a new environment without bringing something new to the table? So taking that one home for myself as well. That's a great question. And I did see that in a lot of the comments here, what is it that you're doing about the burnout? And I hear, just changed environment, changed industry, changed hours. But that's only going to hold that at bay for so long. Evan's got some good comments here, really understanding, solidifying what you want in a company, what you don't, and like what is the relationship you want to have with your employer, because it is a two-way relationship. I think that's great. So we have that clearly on the table, that there's a lot of turnover in HR, a lot of pressure. And I know that career development is still important, and we're working through these priorities and trying to just get through the current state of the world. What do you recommend to HR professionals who still want to be making progress on their career development throughout all of this challenge and this personal, pressure and burnout and all these things? How do we make sure we don't, let ourselves down or forget about ourselves?
Yeah, the first thing we have to do, and I was struggling with if I wanted to say this on this call or not, but no one's going to look out for you. Like, I think you should just start with that general sense, is that as the HR person, you have to be the one looking out for yourself. If you work for a great founder or CEO, they might pick up their heads to ask how you are, but most likely you're taking care of them too. So I don't want us to have this kind of view of who's going to be out there taking care of me. And I actually think we'll do better once we realize that we're responsible for taking care of ourselves first, Cara. So what is the system that we're going to deploy to do that, to ensure that we're taking care of ourselves first? So like for me personally, I know that if I do yoga 1 day a week, it doesn't have to be 5, just 1 day a week. I know that if I can, make sure I get out and like have a connection with nature 1 time a day, I do better with that. And these are things that sound little, but if I build into the cadence of my habits, make a big difference for me. I also know that I need to eat. I oftentimes give up food And I think it's not a big deal, but getting hangry is real. And so I need to make time to have the food that I know is good for my system, make time to eat it, and like really just make sure I'm nourished throughout the day, because remote work, like on those Zoom days, it just seems to fade away. That work-life blur is real. And then you've gone 12 hours and you've had 4 coffees and like 2 LaCroix. And it's like, what have I done today? And so it's important that we center ourselves around the things we know make our system operate. So I'd love for you to take out of this, what is your operating system and what do you need to put into it or do to it with your environment to make it thrive? And don't count on anyone else to take care of you outside of maybe this group. And I'd love to figure out as a follow-up to this, what we can do for each other and how we can encourage each other. So I have people outside of my bamboo life that understand what I've committed to, and they ask me how it's going. And that makes a big difference for me. They're like, did you make yoga this week? Did you go outside 5 times each, once a day for 5 days in a row if you were working on Zoom for 5 days in a row? So can we create that type of support system here within this webinar? That would be a dream for me, Cara.
Yeah, we definitely are hoping to support you guys with creating this space, at least one little facet of it, but there's definitely more. And yeah, that looking out for yourself. I mean, I think that it really empowers us to show up better on our teams too. When people can trust us that we are advocating for our own needs and taking care of our food, water, shelter, if you will, then we are more trustworthy to participate in an authentic way. And I think that's what a lot of our teams really need from us.
I love this. Rosemary said on this, as HR individuals, we are in the in-betweeners. Meditating is not only for our employees and Canada's leadership team, but everyone else in between. And I would just I love this, Cara, because if we aren't the consumers of our own programs, we aren't any good about it. Right. And oftentimes we build these things and we push it out, but we don't do it ourselves. We have our own, I always kind of want to call it the warrior of wellness. Is that what we're doing this month in June? Yeah. I love it. I just can't get it to roll off my tongue, but that's our water bottles. It has connected, which is our theme for the year. And then we take pictures when we're all, yes, cheers, when we're drinking our water, and we post it into a group Slack channel, just knowing that water consumption helps our bodies. And it's little things. So I'm really pushing our team. What can we do? I've been scheduling yoga here at the office to get in my 1-day week. And, what can we do that is part of what we're asking our team members to do? If you're going to push Headspace as a benefit, are you using Headspace yourself? What are those things that we're self-consuming?
Yeah, awesome. And I love just the idea of making sure it's part of the conversation often. So, because it's not always an internal practice, and and we have to use external resources to support ourselves. Like you said, maybe your boss isn't going to be the one who's going to check if you do yoga every week, but as often as you maybe chime into a meeting and be like, what, I just feel good, I did my yoga today. You can help remind other people that it's an ongoing effort, that you're making it, that you wouldn't be showing up the way you are if you weren't doing it. So it's expected and supported for them to make time and priorities around that as well. How about professional development and what might be offered and from the business side of things for continuing to develop further in the career, or other ideas, recommendations that you would have that they can take on independently or advocate for to make sure that their careers, we're talking about taking care of yourself, your human suit, and being able to come, be present and be able to come to work to handle this onslaught of uncertainty and challenges. So we're talking about being physically resilient and mentally resilient, but what about, being a career driven still and productive in that sense of the bigger picture? Because I feel like our microcosm right now is just sucking us in, but how do we stay on top of our big goals?
This is a great question, Cara. So This is another one of the programs we ship out, right? Is learning and development. What are we doing for learning and team member development? And Cara is saying, what are we doing for our own learning and development as HR professionals? I'm a big fan. The best learning and development I've had comes from on-the-job training. There's no course, there's no book I can read that replicates the practicality of what I like to call on the field learning. So you're right in the middle of it. And what that looks like. So I just spent the last 3 hours talking about how do we help attainment and lower attrition of our sales team. And it's being right in the center of the conversations happening in the business right now. And so it's learning about what drives attainment for the sales team, what doesn't drive attainment, what's happening with our customer base, what's happening with the macroeconomic situation, being able to pinpoint the problem. And the way you do that is you come with your business hat on. You can't sit in those meetings and talk about it from an HR seat all the time. They'll kick you out. So how do you understand the business? Are you sitting in the operational meetings or the business meetings like I love in the Hamilton? Like, are you in the room where it happens? You got to get in the room where it happens. And when you do that, then you're going to learn so much about what's happening and how your team can show up better or different for it. And look, there's no playbook. You can't go look. And I remember I had this great privilege of sitting in Jim Collins's office in Boulder. And I went to him with a bunch of things. And I was like, you've worked with all the best leaders, in the world. And I said, I just need the playbook for this. And he looked at me and he was like, Anita, it's a homebrew. You got to make it yourself. You got to look at your company's mission. You have to look at your company's values. You have to look at the customer that you're serving. And from that place, you build something that works for the business. And ever since then, it completely evolved my perception on things of be in the room where it happens and say, how does this then apply to my people practices, knowing I'm only moving 3 big rocks. Like the other oldie but goodie I'm a big fan of is that original Stephen Covey video where he has the big rocks and the pebbles. And I feel like as HR leaders, we're just filling our bucket with pebbles, but we miss the giant big rocks. So name the 3 big rocks that you're going to move, put those in first. They get calendar time first. They get meeting time first. That's why I'm also rigorous about telling people about my prioritization. And then I use that as my own learning and development feed. Now, there's a lot of things I don't know. And so I do have a tight network of individuals that I call and I say, hey, I've never built this before, or I'm not sure how I want to do this now. Can you brainstorm with me on how that would work? And that's my learning and development course, because I need somebody that understands the size of my company, the stage of my company, me, where I'm at, our culture, and no book or course is customized enough for me. So I would focus, that's why these webinars are so good. Connect with the people in these webinars, find people that are in a similar size and stage company that you are, and call them and say, how would you do this? And that's the intention of what Bamboo wants to be, to help you all be the hero of your organization, is you have a place that you can rely on for ideas that generate your own toolkit, not playbook. And so to me, that is learning and development. That's what I found most useful in my career. I have read great books and I have seen great speakers, but it only speaks to you if it's solving a current pain that you have. Otherwise, it's just like good information. So, balance it out. All books won't solve all problems, and all, face-to-face conversations won't solve it either. It's a combination of the two. Cara, I think is my recipe, my homebrew.
Your homebrew. I love that. That really speaks to me, Anita. I know as someone who is, I like to be ambitious in my career and my personal life. And I've read a lot of self-help books, if you will. And something I started to recognize was that I think the people writing the books, there are nuances and tacit things in their systems that they don't even know how to share. So you're never going to get the whole picture. I think one of the things that I came across that I think is important for me to understand is that if I really want to understand how someone does something, and I need to see like their decision-making processes and how they wake up in the morning, and what they choose to prioritize. What are those 3 big rocks they're choosing? And I think that mentorship is one of the few ways that you really get that view. And so it really is something that I think is an important part of your homebrew, not just, reading about it elsewhere. So getting actually engaged with someone who can relate is important. And there's not a one size fits all, like you said. I think that's great advice. And you remind me now, we've been talking about, because we've all needed it, about how do we take care of our employees with the retention needs that we have? How do we take care of ourselves and stay resilient? But taking care of the business is our job. We actually, there's always that age old, like, does HR serve the business or serve the employees who we serve? And at the end of the day, like, we still need to serve the business needs. So I'm wondering, as we're going through this, uncertain times and potential layoffs or hiring freezes and stuff, and lots of, I've heard stories of companies hiring a lot of talent acquisition and then suddenly not hiring a lot. So it's a pretty scary time, even for the HR professional themselves, as far as maintaining, some safety of having clear contribution to the business. What can our HR professionals be doing, Anita, that will build a strong relationships within the company with, like, the CEO and the executive team, and make sure that they're being seen as, an integral person to be at the table, and fostering those relationships and making sure they're seen as a business contributor?
Yeah, so a few things that you said to Cara, I'd love to share back. First, to Derek, we love Marty Kagan here at BambooHR, a big product influencer for us. So love that. That's a great set of books for HR professionals to read, especially if you're in SaaS tech, and how product is built. So just wanted to second that. The other thing too, to Cara, that you said is, do HR professionals serve the business of the team member? I don't think we serve either. We serve the mission. We're mission first. So we make decisions around making the mission a reality, around driving performance to the mission. We're agnostic to the company and we're agnostic to the team member. It's got to be mission driven. So happy to talk more about that. But I think if we get stuck on one side or the other, we actually aren't serving the mission at hand. And if your company doesn't have a mission that you can articulate, ours is to set people free to do great work, then that would be the first thing I would tell you to go build with your founder and your leadership team, because that's my gauge. So it's the what we're going to go do. We're going to set people free to go do great work at Bamboo. How we do it is through our values. And then it becomes very managed and measured through those two gates. So that's what I would do there. And with that foundation, then I think we can go forward and on all the different things, to Cara, that you were mentioning kind of in that question. But I just wanted to get that out there. And then I have a quick nibble on mentorship too, if you want to go back there.
Does anyone oppose to I doubt it. I think we all could benefit from mentorship tips. Let's do it. Let's go there, and we'll come on back.
Yeah, no, my quick commercial on mentorship is, I hear this all the time. Anita, I want a mentor. I'm like, great. What do you want to be mentored on? I don't know. I just heard I needed a mentor, right? Because we all agree that mentorship can be a powerful tool. And if you don't know what kind of mentor you want, you won't find a great mentor. So this goes back to part of your own self-care of, like, what is it that you want to learn? Why is career growth important to you? Do you want career growth of, like, I want to run a function? Do you want to be a subject matter expert in recruiting or compensation? What actually do you want? And from that place, we can go find books and courses and mentors and all of the things that will get you there. And so be really specific on what you want before you just start talking to people. And, I get messages as like, will you mentor me? I was like, sure, but what do you want mentorship on? And so I just want to really harken back that be intentional about what you want to create before you go out to find one.
And as a note to that, Anita, too, that's great advice, to know what it is you want to be mentored on, and obviously ask the right person and know that that's something that they have to offer, because we all have our different strengths. But it reminded me that as I've developed in this career and coming into marketing, like, I actually spent 10 years in a veterinary assistant career, and I've and then transitioned. So I have this new career, and I don't know who knows what I need to know yet. So every manager and every every level of management that I ever interact with and get to talk to, I like to tell them what I'm excited about and what I think, would be really cool to do for this organization, or and even in my interview. And there are things that when I got hired were not happening here and were not an option, but I mentioned them in my interview, and I've had those things come back to me from leaders saying, hey, we're actually like ready to start looking at this. And you mentioned this, and we think that, we want to have you involved in that. Are you still interested? And so even just putting it out there, I'm starting to learn, who I can work with and who else gets pulled into those projects. And that introduces me to who I can say, oh my gosh, you're leading this up, this thing that I was interested in. And so now I know you're a great person to ask, and how can I get my hands in this with you? So that's my experience with not knowing who to ask for mentorship, but trying to get really clear about what it is you want mentorship on, and sharing that message so that people know when they can direct you to an opportunity.
One of the ways to help that direction to Cara that you're speaking to is to be mentored by those that are your customer. Right? And HR, we have two big customers, and it's usually sales and it's product and technology, right? Those are like our biggest bases that we're hiring into. So I look for mentorship from leaders that are running those big teams, because they're like really my end customer. And so I want to understand how they think about the business, how they think about the customer, how they think about the product, one of the things I love to do is sit with an engineering leader and say, tell me how you build our product, or sit on customer calls and say, how do we service the customer? What are our biggest issues that we're struggling with in support right now? And so that is, again, it's like in your house. You don't have to go outside of your house for mentorship, and you can get it from inside the business. And I think there's a lot, it's been one of my dreams is to build like an internal rotational system where we can formalize. We actually have done this at a few places I've been before, but you have your own internal mentorship program, and then you rotate mentors within the business. You still have to have an intention around it. But if you can look at it from that way and use this own like a stable of talent that you have right here is so beneficial.
That is such a cool concept, and sign me up. So, okay, great. So
not in my big 3 prioritization right now, but it'll be coming soon.
Fair enough. No, I won't, I'll be patient, but hey, if I can, let me know who I can mentor. I'll pay it forward. I promise.
I love it.
So, okay, we got the mentorship little pin out of the way. And so we were trying to move towards being involved in the business initiatives, having good relationships there, making sure that you're seen as a critical part of business planning. And yeah, let's go back to that way.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is really focusing on being in the conversation where the business strategy is happening. If you, one of the things one of my mentors did early on is he said, get your investor pitch deck and present it to me. That's a great learning and development process too. Like the only way that you can hire, train, and fire to the mission is to understand the investor pitch. So if any of your companies have been raising money or even have gone to secure an SBA loan or anything like that, can you do the pitch? One of the things I was just working, we're going to start moving into a business, an HR business partner concept here at Bamboo. And I was sharing, there's a lot of confusion around what HR business partners do. And I said, if you are a business partner to the head of sales, you could sit in and speak about the business and the customer like your head of sales first. Right? You know the ins and outs of customer acquisition, you know the ins and outs of the product, you know the ins and outs of the compensation plan, you understand the different levels and how you hire into sales. And from that place, you can be a true business partner, because that's what you are first. You may have this discipline called HR, and you're there to really coach and advise to grow and build performance in the vision and in the business. So those are the kind of ways that we're looking to build and have our teams come at it here at Cara, that I think most HR teams in general, or most HR individuals, miss. And so it comes from a very myopic view, and then it's seen as not strategic. The point is usually accurate. right? What I hear, like when I get any consulting work I've done, and I've listened to the C-suite or the CEO, and I've listened to the HR person is right, and so is the founder. They're missing the connection because they're not speaking the same language. Right? The founder is always going to speak in the language of the strategy and the customer. The HR person, it's our job to bridge that gap and pull it out and say, this is how it affects compensation or recruiting, but they don't care about that first. They want to understand that you understand the core problem they're going after. And so that's where, like, especially if I look at what's happening in the market right now around hiring, and HR people are in demand. Everybody wants to hire you. But part of it is finding a real partner that hears the language in which you're speaking and can get like in a partnership to execution for the business. And that's the art, and what we all have to do as HR professionals. The founder won't do it for us.
Wow, that is such a differentiation to seek as an HR professional. And really, I mean, I can only imagine that having, that kind of angle in any interview or on your LinkedIn, of knowing that you're capable of bringing that to the table, is going to award you some pretty big opportunities. So that's awesome. All right.
You can tell right away in the interview questions. When I talk to HR people and I interview them, right away, I can tell where they are on the spectrum. It's all in how the question is answered. And this is, I think, a big pivot point, that if we want to be seen, like right now, we're in a great place because COVID and the actual environment has created value in our jobs. If we want that value to continue to maintain, this is the next step, I think, that we have to like take on a level of business understanding that we haven't been forced to do before.
Yeah, wow, that feels like a really big pivot in HR thought leadership, for sure. That I would think that people would be hungry for advice and help on what like resources and tools that they can get to be better at that. And if I'm, if anyone in the chat is like, hey, actually, no, that's not what I need, please let us know. We want to talk about what's important to you. We're not here to hear our own voices. We want to be engaged with you. But yeah, is there tools or resources that you recommend for how we can be better at that and make that maybe even easier to show up and participate in that way, Anita?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the topic of our time together, which is how are we showing care for ourselves? So there's this, like, we take care of ourselves in a way where we show up consistently for the business. So a few things, right? We're on time. We're prepared. We have an agenda. We know the outcome of our time together. If we're really good, we're sending our agenda in advance to our leadership team, and we're saying, this is what I want to achieve in the time together. This is the problem I think that we're solving. Do you see it the same way? Like, you have your shit together as an HR leader, right? You're not a hot mess and everything. And so you're showing up and you're ready to play and everything. And that comes from how you're taking care of yourself. Are you well rested? Are you well fed? Did you, have preparation time in your day? How do you schedule your day? Like, I don't do meetings before 9. And so it gives me my morning to look at my day, look at my next day. I also love to hold time at the end of every day to say, what am I doing tomorrow? And am I prepared and ready to be super on it for the next day? And so it's how you kind of manage and measure yourself, which is a function of your own self-care. And then from that point, you can kind of build into this rhythm where you're providing this additional value. But if you don't start there, you'll never get to the kind of this end utopia to Cara that I described. So I'd be curious, like, how well we're organized. And the other piece of feedback I get from founders all the time is like, do you know how many recruiters you need to hire enough salespeople in the business, right? Are you running your own team like a sales team would run or a product team would run? So that goes back to the ruthless prioritization, right? Are you able to say yes to the key things? Are you able to say no to all the rest? Are you able to communicate and articulate what you're going after and what you're not? Right? Are you able to show that you can execute on those things? Are you able to show that you thoughtfully apply resources in a way that works for the business? Right? So, I was just trying to think of some good examples. I've worked in teams before where I'm like, until you can show me these things, I'm not going to give additional headcount into this. Like, write the business case. What would I have to believe to be true to resource this area or resource this project? And sometimes I think we as HR leaders look and we say everybody else has to do that but us. Like, do you make all your other leaders do QBRs, like quarterly business reviews or monthly business reviews? And do you participate in that? And do you have meaningful KPIs? And do you report out on hires when the business needs them, and attrition rates and retention rates and all the same KPIs that the business has? So to me, Cara, that's like the entry card into that next level that we were describing.
It sounds to me like you're saying, Anita, that we have to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, that we have to set the example and hold ourselves to high standards. And that's not easy, but I think, it's rewarding, and it definitely will reinforce itself. I'd like to know in the chat, what of those like little hacks or personal processes do you use that make sure that you have your ducks in a row? I'm going to need water. Sorry.
I'm just reading this comment from Becca. Unfortunately, my old job did not see the value in me knowing a lot about our customers. We did a lot of in-home care for clients with developmental disabilities. I could have walked in and took care of them if I needed to at the moment. I took a lot of pride in knowing that. When I realized they did not take value, I struggled with it. I do see the value in what you're saying. So, Beck, I think this is true. You have to tie it together, which is part of it. Like, you can understand it, but how do you pull the thread all the way through to what it means to the HR practices? So understanding is one thing, and then full cycle, like application is part of it. So it'd be interesting to dive in and do more. And part of it is knowing your customer, like, and what they hired you for, right? What did they hire you for? Yes, hydration checkpoint, you must do it. Because if they hired you to be a recruiter, but they put it on under the shell of HR generalist, and they're just asking you about recruiting, you have to know that, right? You still have to know the business to recruit. I'll tell you this story while Cara is hydrating. Oh yes, we're going to pick up Q&A soon, so get your questions in the chat. But I was interviewing a comp analyst. And so the first question I asked the comp analyst, he was working in another SaaS tech company. And I said, tell me how the company you're at right now builds your product. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, how do you build product? And he's like, I don't understand. I said, how did your company build the product they actually ship to customers? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, I don't know how you price a job without knowing. Like, that's a fundamental piece to our whole team member value proposition, is that you get paid fairly and consistently relative to the pay position you have in market. How do you not know how you build product? You can't price a job without it. And so there is a piece to understanding the business or the job roles, especially if you're going to go hire for them. You have to understand how to talk to really seasoned engineers, to principal engineers. You have to understand what they see valuable, how they work, what kind of team formation they like, how they like to deliver on product. So I think it's all tied back. It's just what context you put it into, Becca, that creates that connection. Cara, do you want me to go into the questions? How are you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm doing better. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I see, Becca, I value what you shared. I worked in developmentally disabled group homes, and I know how touching and heartfelt like it is to be someone who knows that field and ends up in HR. Like, I think I get who you are as a person quite a bit from that share, and I know that it's hard when other people don't see that connection, and I'm glad that you're asking, because it is important, and it does make a big difference at the end of the day. Leah, maybe, sorry, but you shared that you have this screen break with your lunch, and you make sure you go on a walk and get outside, and that your company also does no meeting Thursdays, and that you used to load those days up on external meetings. And I wanted to point to that because I know how easy it is to take advantage of what's supposed to give yourself a break as like hiding that you are actually working harder and cheating yourself from that break. Like, it's like, oh, no one expects anything of me right now, so I can like make bonus effort somehow. I've had to work with that for myself, that a company holiday is not a catch-up day for me, right? But we're ready to answer your questions. If anyone has any to share, anything that you want to come on and talk about, or anything we've said today that, you know, we haven't maybe scratched your itch about exactly what, you know, you want to know about this, let's get into it. And
yeah, go ahead.
If we don't have a question ready to go, oh, Isabel, cool. Yeah. What's the best practice to renew the passion, motivation for your role and activities, especially when they are asking for it or mention something for the leaders?
Passion, motivation for your activities, especially when they ask or mention it to some of the leaders. Isabel, can you be a little bit more specific? I just want to make sure I really answer what you're getting to.
Let's get her on live.
Yeah.
Do you want to can you bring me on Isabel? If you,
Natalie, we'd love to hear at the beginning of August how no internal meetings on Tuesdays works for you. So come back August 1st and let us know.
Hello,
Isabel.
I'm from Mexico, so my accent is a little bit strong. So I hope I get myself like understood by everyone. But sometimes we receive some comments from other leaders in the company that you're lacking of passion or motivation or stuff like that. And they ask it in a good way, but what is the best practices for the ones who are receiving these comments? Because, for example, I have received this comment and another colleague has received this comment, and we have a bunch of things going on and we try to complete everything, but it's kind of hard to know what they're expecting. We ask, but still it's like, you are lacking of that punch or that motivation or that passion. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is they're expecting you to show up a way that's different than you are. And anytime somebody gives me that feedback, I'm like, what would that look like? Like specifically in the moment, I ask them to coach me. So if I'm presenting something to them on employee engagement, and I would say, did I exhibit the passion or excitement that you were looking for? And if not, what specifically would I've done differently? Because a lot of times what people say, you'll hear me say this a lot, what they say and what they mean is very different. So I always love, Isabel, to ask more questions of like, what would it look like for you? What exactly would you want me to do? And get them to really name and articulate what they're seeking from you. And then you can find out more. But those broad, big, it's kind of like always and never statements, I discount by like 50x. Just because it seems dramatic to me. So what are you really wanting me to do different? And then I usually take it upon myself is to ask that person more often after I complete a project or a meeting or a session with somebody to say, what would you like to see better, different from me in the next one that I do? So you're just really asking for it. And then you can kind of start to look for patterns and things. Would be my advice. It's hard for me to solve without that person here. To really get into their brain around what they're looking for. Is that useful?
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. Yeah, I think also to add to that, Anita, is that receiving criticism and feedback is something that we all have to work on and is really important. And we may, and try to do that in a way where we just like have no pushback. So you might just be like, okay, I hear you. Thank you. And just because you're trying to be good at receiving critique and criticism and feedback, right? But actually being able to say, oh, that's so interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Tell me more about how that would look, I think is really the next level of receiving feedback and actually being able to implement and engage with it. So I hope that helps too. Great. Thanks, Isabel. And Anita, I know, okay, we'd love for this to like turn into a little bit more of like a community engagement as we grow and as you get comfortable with us and as you kind of see what we're here doing. But are our time is running out today. Anita, what actionable items do you want to leave with our guests today and our community?
Yes, first, fill your bucket up for you first. You can't, I think it was in this chat. It was also on my LinkedIn post from a friend of mine in Australia. You can't give to others if you don't give to yourself first. So make a recipe of self-care for you. And find a friend, phone a friend that you can trust, that you can talk to about your progress in it. So that's kind of job one. And know that other people in your role are struggling. So whether it's on LinkedIn engagement or just phone one of those peers and say, how are you doing today? Because it seems like we're all going through our own personal and professional struggles with the current environment. And that's just what's happening out there. So let's be there for each other. You know, second, use your business as your own vehicle for professional development. Don't feel like you've got to go outside and load yourself up on a bunch of different things or hold yourself to a quota of book reading and Audible credits, right? Do what's in your business, get those closest to you to help you. And if you need somebody outside, if the capability is not resident and 1 degree from you, create a job description for a mentor and send it to us and we'll help you find that great mentor that can help you. Third is run the HR business like a business in the business. Does that make sense? Like if you're expecting your sales and marketing teams to do things that you aren't doing around KPIs and OKRs, I mean, pick your synonym acronym. What is it when you have a bunch of letters together? Like KPI, OKR. Yeah, pick one of those things and make sure you're doing it for yourself, like the business is doing it for themselves. And most importantly, just take care of you and pull yourself into a good format where you can give. So we kind of talked about that, like, you know, be ready to play every day, be ready to get on the field, make sure you give yourself enough prep time at morning and at night to get all of your ducks in a row so you can show up and be a great demonstration of your mission and values.